Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you see a little link down below and you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can click on it. You'll end up in Zoom. Then you'll see another little link and you can click on that. You'll end up in Mukana. And in Mukana is where you really become a producer. You define the entire show, the answers that, or the questions that you come up with, the votes that you vote, what you vote on. All of those things drive the conversation that we have here. So it'd be great if you come join us over there. If you're watching on YouTube, if you think you can actually be part of the conversation and join the illustrious panel here, all you have to do is get here early. 6 o'clock a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when we open the doors, and you can come in, make sure your kit's working, make sure everything's kind of ready to go for the show. You need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for us to do mic checks. So if you're not here by then, just come another day. But we'd love to have you join us and become part of the conversation. 7 o'clock, we start general discussion. And today we're going to have all general discussion. So it'll be 2 hours of Q&A. But generally on the second hour, we have something specific that we want to talk about. Tomorrow, Leon Speakers, the founder of Leon Speakers is going to be here talking about how speakers are designed. They build them from scratch. That kind of boggles my mind. It's one thing to kind of come up with speakers and then make them over and over and over again. It's another thing to have to keep on making them different all the time. So we're going to be talking about speakers tomorrow. Wednesday, John Barker, who's here in the panel with us today, is going to be talking about his little program. It's not even a little program anymore. It's a lot of programs that a lot of us are using for our ATEMs and for other services. And John produces incredible videos on YouTube, as well as producing some really great software. So he's going to talk about that on Wednesday. On Thursday, we're going to show anaglyphs. I know, a little old. I feel like I'm going back to the 50s. I feel like I should have switched to black and white. Anaglyphs, of course, are red and blue images that will, if you wear the right glasses, will look like 3D. And they're still pretty cool if you have the red, blue glasses. So you still have time. You can go order them. In the past weeks, I've been giving you a link, but we'll have like a little theater and show a couple. We'll also talk about how to make them. It's just it's a fun little process. By request on Friday, we're going to talk about networking. A lot of people have wanted to just do a general Q&A about networking to really understand it. Most of us are controlling our hardware, our software, all kinds of things over IP, and we're still trying to figure out how that all works. So we're going to have an open Q&A for that. So that'll be Friday. And then Saturday, of course, is the long day. Education for 2 hours from 8 to 10. And then from 10 to 11, Nick Justishin will be here talking about metahumans. We're going to last week we talked about how to get the metahuman into Unreal. This week, we're going to talk about connecting your phone to the metahuman. And our challenge for you is to go ahead and try to do that. Get a metahuman into Unreal, try to attach the phone, write down all your questions, and then come and join us on Saturday and we'll talk through it. At 11, we're going to go back into the test kitchen. And so we're testing recipes together. We'll have that recipe out by Wednesday for you if you want to join us. It's kind of a really fun process of thinking about how to do lab projects together. And we happen to be using food. And so we're having a lot of fun with it. And I'm kind of discussing those processes. We won't start cooking until probably 11:30, so because we're going to come right out of Nick's little thing here. So we'll have half an hour of us kind of figuring stuff out and working that out. And then 11:30, we'll start cooking and seeing what that next one looks like. And then I got to tell you, the Mad in the Kitchen thing's getting pretty interesting. So Nate Hill joined us last week. Nate Hill is one of my top TDs that I work with all the time. And so Nate was like, hey, I'm game, so we brought him in from Salt Lake City, and he actually watched Mad in the Kitchen, the multi-views, called the show from Salt Lake City while I was cutting in San Rafael, California. And then, of course, Sky and Madeline are in Seattle, and Ken is in London, and there's people all over the world. So it's a pretty interesting thing that we're doing there. So I think Nate's going to be back, and we may even try to push it even further and have another TD cutting the show from their house. So we're going to kind of keep on extending how far we can take this. And so if you want to watch that and how it works and how it comes together, we open the comms typically at 3 o'clock. We had some technical issues on this last one, but we should have the comms open at 3 o'clock. You can just listen to us setting up and getting ready. And then at 5 o'clock, the show starts. And then about 6:30, the show ends and we start talking about the show. So the thing you can watch it, you can hear the comms, you can literally hear Nick, or not Nick, but Nate calling the show over comms and everything else. And so it's a pretty interesting way to kind of watch a show. So I'd highly recommend checking it out. All right, Guy, I think you're going to be doing the questions today. So what do we got?
Rock and roll. Here's the first one up from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. He asks, any tried and true tested ways to connect a USB webcam to a Raspberry Pi and stream the video signal over the network to vMix or OBS, or to get a clean HDMI output from the Pi of the webcam?
We really need Jonas to be here, I think. I don't know if yeah, go ahead. He's here. He just has, you go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I know someone who used to be a regular on the panel, Eric Hall, was able to get it done. I don't know to what success or to how reliable it was, but he was able to do it.
Yeah, but we don't know how. We'll have to get Eric Hall back. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois. Is there a way in Mukana to turn the video off when in Zoom session YouTube starts playing and has to be stopped?
Yes, you can use the mobile version. so the reason a lot of people use the mobile version. If you look at the links inside of Zoom, you'll see one for the desktop and one for the mobile, and you can use the mobile version there. And then you can go crazy. You can open up 3 mobile versions and hit each tab and then just put them wherever you want them. It's crazy. So you could do that as well. Next question.
Next one's from Scott Mueller in Clinton Corners, New York. Do you think Zoom will at any point add some of the features that are missing that require us to purchase multiple computer Zoom rooms and software to put on the productions at the level we are trying to do? And note features like audio mixing, graphics, clean multiple ISO recordings, better switching control.
I don't really think it's Zoom's job, I guess is what I would say, is I think that we are, this group, it seems like, because we hang out with each other, it seems like everybody must be doing this, but nobody's doing this other than us. So we just have to remember, and this has been, the story of my life for a long time. I once called and I was complaining about 444 capture on Final Cut. I was talking to someone at AJA about their boards, and there's this one little problem, and they're like, you're like one of 8 people in the world doing that. Like there's nothing we can do to fix that. There's nothing, we're not going to fix that. And so they're at least they were truthful. But I think that the problem you get into when you build, I think we just have to back up a little bit and realize that Zoom is serving hundreds of millions of people at this point. Every button that you see, just remember that, like, if you see a button on Zoom at this point added, that costs $1 million. Just keep it in your head, like, that button was $1 million. It was $1 million to have the meetings, to do the code, to do the testing, to do the build, to do the testing, to do the next build, do the testing, to do the beta, to respond to everything. So every little button, every little change is $1 million. That's like table stakes. Some of a feature, it's like $10 million. And a major feature, it's like $50 million. Like, and I've worked with not Zoom, but other companies. But you want to think in those kinds of numbers when you're thinking about, like, how much it costs to get something done. Maybe not 50 million, but probably 20 million. To do a major feature, just to do all the testing and all the coding and all the staff and all the things. It's hundreds of people that have to be integrated to make something work. Because of that, companies will focus on the meat of their market. And the meat of their market is not people doing broadcast with their product. But that is why Zoom has gotten much more liberal about their API in the way that you integrate with Zoom, the video API, which allows you to do anything. So they've been like, hey, we can't keep up. We can't do that. Here, you guys can have, we'll give you all the things. So what we want to be asking for as users is not so much Zoom to do it, but more for Zoom to give us more control. Like, APIs are what we want. And then we want people like Liminal making Zoom OSC and doing other things like that, where we really get what we need out of the engine, in my opinion. So that's, go ahead, Leland.
Yeah, and you're nailing it on the head, Alex, as far as APIs and SDKs are concerned. I've been beta testing these kind of softwares for almost 10 years now. It really comes down to feature sets that fit the global market, not the individual market. And those SDKs, or software development kits, and APIs, or advanced programming interfaces, are there for people to come together and build things. It's really why they do that, because they can't do it all. So they rely on the rest of us to help.
Yeah, it's the bell curve versus what I call the lunatic fringe, the little edges at the edge of the bell curve. Also, I had a very similar thing with AJA a year or two ago, where there was something that bothered me, and I was like, "Is that going to get fixed?" And the guy just said, "No, nobody cares about that but you."
Yeah, exactly. And we used to joke that our assumption was that when we think about Apple, we always think, well, 90% of the people want to do 90% of the time, and that's where most companies, whoever is in their market, what does 90% want to do 90% of the time? That's going to be a good, whatever your market is that you choose. You want to look at that 10%. It's why it makes more sense for Final Cut to build lots of tools that make sense for corporate video, education, independent film, YouTube production, those types of things, because that's 90% of their market. The folks in film and TV asking for these crazy little knobs and all this other stuff, that's not going to ever pencil out financially, and so I think that's the thing that we always have to remember. Next question.
Next one's from Noah Sargent Fullerton, also here on the panel. He says, HDMI from M1 Mac Mini is not always recognized in ATEM Mini Pro. My fix is to unplug and replug. Any other suggestions? Hate to have to do that every time.
We haven't had to do it every time. Go ahead, Chris.
I'll say, Noah, I have the exact same issue. I have to unplug. Now I'm kind of hacking mine with the display port thing, and I have to unplug it, plug it every morning for my ATEM to see all three outputs from my M1 Mac Mini every morning.
Go ahead, Jason.
So just to shed some light on this, the issue has to do with the way that the M1 Mac Mini enumerates or, individually addresses that specific piece of hardware. And I would say check your cables. Don't go through a dock, go directly in. Fenwick's like, I don't know.
Is this after after turning everything off and then back on again? Or is it just on and it's not working when you walk back in?
I tend to power cycle it every time. Yeah.
Is it
That's
going
my
to
guess.
sleep?
Again, Leland?
Do those units go to sleep in any way, shape, or form?
No, they don't sleep.
He's power cycling them. He is turning them off. So, I do think I agree with Jason that I think that you're dealing with this. It's not the ATEM issue. It's the Mac Mini reevaluating what it's outputting. But I think that have you tried just turning off the ATEM and not turning off the Mac Mini? I'm curious whether the Mac Mini would say, so really you turn either one of them off and the Mac Mini is now going to be reestablished.
When you lose power to the ATEM, the Mac is like, oh, you unplug the monitor. It sees it as a missing monitor.
And I am going through a dongle, so I'll try to eliminate that and do.
Are you going through a dongle, Chris?
HDMI.
No. Well, I do use the display link dongle, but even the one that comes directly off the Mac Mini gets confused. I mean, my Mac Mini loses track of how many monitors I'm pretending it has.
Well, the pretending part is
my issue is different than Noah's. My issue is exacerbated beyond what Noah's is. But Noah, let's try and leave our ATEMs and Mac Minis on for a couple of days and see if it lets. And I'd get rid of the dongle if you can.
What's interesting is on supportapple.com, that complete reboot is telling you to remove the item, unplug the HDMI cable, turn it off, and then plug it back in is their solution to that same problem. So hard.
I'm trying to think of why that behavior, there's a reason for it. I just don't know what it is. Next question.
Next one's from Tony Mobley in Noonan. He asks, what is the best headphone connection for a USB-C device, wired or wireless? Please share examples of the best solutions.
I'm assuming a USB-C only device. Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah, I'm assuming that Tony might be talking about an iPad Pro. For something like that, just I would recommend just going with the Apple USB-C to headphone adapter.
Yeah, it's gonna be a nice clean connection.
Wired always whenever possible.
Yep. Next question.
Next one's from Eric Price in Leavenworth, Kansas. Anyone have any experience with cellular bonding technology for remote broadcasting? Thoughts on reliability versus cost? Note, I know wireless is generally not preferred, but going to be dealing with an event with no hardline capability.
I used to have long-term leases on 2 live views, and then I rented them all over the world. So it's definitely something we use. We very rarely used our live views as our primary connections. We usually use them as the backup for a satellite or fiber or other things that we had there. That said, 98% of the time you get nice clean signal. So it's the 2% that's unfortunate. So the thing you just have to know is that there are certain places where wireless works really well. Places that you have, a diverse set of cell towers or cell connections, it works pretty well because it can jump on Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T and mix and match those. We used extenders with our live views, so we had 14 modems, that were all sucking up as much data as they could. Now, one of the things that you can do with a lot of these is to mix and match. So if you're near a Wi-Fi signal, you can add that to the mix. If you have access to Ethernet, you can add that to the mix. So those are all kinds of things that you can do with something that's really built for that kind of backhaul. The real problem you get into is in highly populated areas. So if you're doing an event where there's a political rally or a concert or a parade, those are places it doesn't work very well. So there's a lot of people using their cell information and their cell data, and they just overload the cell towers. And so they just, that tends to kind of fall apart pretty quickly. And I was using we use the 500, 600, and that's the little one.
It's the baby one. This one has Ethernet, and then so if you do have a hard line, you can use that as one of the failovers. And it's got I plug in 2 USB modems, and then I use my wireless as well. So I have the wireless Nighthawk that you can actually channel tune that one to use some. If you're doing an event where the cellular gets saturated, you can actually program that one to go to some other channels that may not be utilized. So and then you got to pay $350 to get the bonding in the cloud for that service a year. So even though these are like $1,000, don't forget that to bond it, the server at the other side is something that you have to pay for. You have to make your own with like a PepWave or something like that. They have a Speedify or not Speedify. I wouldn't recommend Speedify. I know Jonas is using it, but I recommended it and it's worked for some people, but then it burned some other people, including me. So I don't recommend it anymore.
Yeah, and you can also augment that with an Ethernet connection. We've augmented with a KA satellite uplink. So you can get a small KA dish that will get 5 megs, 10 megs a second to a satellite. We'll bring it back down, and via Ethernet you can push it back into what you're doing there. So then you're completely outside of that process. Or you can, if you have just in case you're wondering, if you put a KU truck with a buck, you can actually you can get 40 megs, 100 megs out of that and plug it back into your live view. So it's but we usually just use the satellite truck at that point. Go ahead, Keenan.
So we've had really good luck with the Cradle Point routers that have FirstNet and Verizon in them, and a 14-watt buck on our command trailer really works well for pushing live video up. But the Cradle Points are really nice because they have both networks built in, and they do reasonably well for auto failover. It's not instant. So I don't know how that would work with the live view, but
that's the best part. With the live view, you start adding that stuff in, and what it'll do is you're getting 3 to 5 second latency, to get it to the far end. So to wherever you have a spigot that's going to push out, it's got to be connected to the internet too. So you have to have somewhere, there's a server unit that's got, typically the live view one has 4 outs. And so it's going to be sitting there pushing video somewhere that you have to be able to grab onto and put it into your switch. So that's the other side of that process. But live view will use all of that data, all of the different things you give. It's not failing over. It's bonding everything together in the cloud and then providing it back inside of that larger latency. As you turn that latency down, it becomes less stable, because now it can't get the packets in time to keep them, to keep them in line. So I usually turn the live view up to 5 seconds of latency I don't try to go low latency with the live view just because of that. You can also use things like, and Keenan, have you used pep waves, or have you used that at all for bonding?
No, we've stuck pretty much primarily with Cradlepoint, and we have the larger enterprise ones that have multiple modems, multiple paths, everything. I even have one in my truck that's a Cradlepoint, and they've been a solid product. They're not cheap, but they're one of those products that just, it works.
Yeah.
And we can have it fall over. We start it usually on AT&T FirstNet, and then we fall over to Verizon. So everything I have is dual band. We have a SIM card and a modem for each carrier pre-built. And since the modem is built on the router, it's a little bit better than the USB dongles, because you're not getting USB bottleneck.
And you're not, but and these are failing from one to the next. So bonding, we're really using all of that bandwidth together. And so there's not really any failover. They're just kind of a push back and forth. There's also Dejero makes another one that's built for video. So there's Dejero, there's LiveView, there's another one out of Canada, and
mobile viewpoint. I think
mobile viewpoint. That's another one that I forget every single time. So I'm really glad that Teradek has. Yeah, we haven't been. We owned a bond from Teradek, and I think they may have gotten better, but the ones that we got, we had some trouble with. So we had, but I think that it wasn't, again, when you're used to a live view, I will say that our current experience has been mobile viewpoint and live view are the two. Mobile viewpoint is the geeky version of live view. So mobile viewpoint is, you have tons of data on the back end of how everything's coming back and forth, and you have a lot more control. Live view is a little bit more set and forget. And then we owned a Dejero for a while, and it wasn't as successful as the live view, so we went back to live view. So, but those are years ago. A lot of these could have improved. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jeremy B. in Hallsville. I'm looking for a cost-effective solution to have remote PTZ cameras. Is it better to get BM pocket cams with remote control gimbal or purpose-built 1080 PTZ cameras?
As much as I would love to say that you should get the pocket cameras, it's really painful. Just in case you're wondering, like building up a separate one, if for remote use, if you're gonna either spend real money on it or you're gonna be constantly fiddling with it. And when I say real money, the head is going to cost you $3,000 to $5,000 minimum, before you're going to have something that actually works. And really, it's usually the heads we bought were 10 or 15,000 a unit, and then we're putting URSAs on them and stuff like that. But they're a lot of work if you're going to separate the cameras out. So you just have to decide if you're trying to do an easy, relatively quick plug and play. I would definitely go for an integrated solution. I think the guy looks like he's moving around like he's going to show us something, but
I was going to pick it up, but I was like, I already showed this yesterday, but I'll grab it anyway, because really with the one that I want to get, it's the next one up to compete with the sensor of a pocket camera. You really want the next brother up to this, which is the P400, or you want the Panasonic.
That's the bird dog? Or is that?
Yeah, this one's the P200. It's full NDI. That's the difference. But the other one has a 1-inch sensor, which would more aptly compete with a 4/3 or a full, Super 35 sensor. It's the lensing, like this is a 30x zoom. So how are you going to compete with that with, all that variability with a DSLR type lens? It's two different worlds really. But that control, it just depends on the shot that you want. Are you doing, performances like a musical performance where you want to push in tight, or a church event where you want to get in on a stage from afar and you don't want operators, especially with COVID times. Like I brought this one home to test with Jonas from Mad in the Kitchen, because I want to see what it's like for him to control this from Germany. So that's going to be some next level stuff. So hopefully we'll get it tested this week and have it on the set of Mad in the Kitchen, so we can see what the look looks like compared. So then you can see a video look versus a filmic look, and we'll see you guys get that large sensor look versus a video camera, because I think you'll appreciate what we're talking about here, which is pocket camera versus a PTZ camera.
Yeah. Noah?
Yeah, I was just going to mention the sensor size, like Guy's talking about, such a huge difference, like going from a 1-inch to an APS-C, or even a full frame sensor. Like that depth of field and the look of it just totally changes the game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones that I'm really excited about is the new Canon, which I just haven't been able to test yet. The new Canon one looks really good. The ability to do log and high dynamic range, or not high dynamic range, but a wider gamut. to make that work. It looks like a really compact or relatively compact camera. Most of my experience has been with the BRC 900 and 1000 as far as all-in-ones. We had some experience with we owned the Panasonic 120s and just weren't happy with the video quality, but the 150s we haven't had the opportunity to work with yet. And then most of our PTZ stuff in 2017 or so moved to telemetrics and URSAs. And so then that was a whole different world. And to your point, the reason we went to those is so that we could use Super 35 and PL lenses. And, it really took it to a whole nother level really fast. Go ahead, Sky.
Just curious, the low profile of that PTZ camera that you used last week, Guy, was, and plus it was white, that it just kind of blended in as it was unobtrusive. I'm just curious what the form factor of that is. It a similar coffee can shape? Is it going to look like an R2D2 hanging from the ceiling?
This one's pretty big, and the one that I want to bring in is way bigger. The other one's like bigger than your head. I mean, it's a monster. The P400 is going to be, it's a beast.
But it's not, the question is it in the camera shot or not? It's not in the camera shot.
Yeah, exactly. Madeline never goes over to, she never goes over to the kit, to the, where we would have it positioned above the sink. So there's no shot there.
Yeah,
so
that's fine. That's cool.
I don't care if it's the size of an M1 tank as long as it doesn't end up in my shot. So yeah,
that's my question. That's exact. I'm looking after you, Alex.
I'm saying, what someone needs to make is an 8x10 PTZ, at least a video for it. It doesn't even have to exist. 8x10 PTZ.
I just imagine an R2D2 hanging over the ceiling as like,
great.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's from Noah Sargent in Fullerton. My church is looking to replace their 20 tungsten stage lights. The throw is about 20 feet and is mostly source 4s and PARs. Any recommendations for LED DMX controlled lights that are reasonably affordable?
We discussed this, last week. There was a good answer for this last week, I think. But I think we were talking about American DJ Chauvet for the ones that were more cost effective. And then it starts to, go up from there. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah. At that price range, like a little lower, we have a bunch of these. These are the Aperture 120Ds too. I believe they're the smallest ones from Aperture that do DMX, and they've been great. We have, like 6 or 7 of these. We've also used the 300s. And then if you really want some power, the 600, but that gets a bit, it's a little pricier. Also, Nanlite has a bunch that do DMX. I think for the price to bang ratio that you get from these two companies, like they tend to be the leaders at what you can get for the money as far as quality and functionality and control over them. Like they do have a wide range of things. So I would check Nanlite and Aperture. And then you just get more expensive after that.
And we don't have that form factor, but we bought hundreds of lights from Nanlite. so our experience with them has been really good. I think both of them are to me, they're in the same window for that area. And I think you probably find that's the best. To Charles's point, Nanlite and Aperture are probably the two best in that kind of cost effective range. What I started talking about were movers. So some, moving lights, I have to admit there's very few shows I work on anymore that have fixed lights, so they are more expensive to get the power that you need. I just don't know any, like when I'm going into a theater every light is moving, like at this point. And so because I can remember when we went from fixed to moving, and it's just like, you just keep on designing things and you keep on changing things. If there's any way that you can afford to put all movers in there, and that for a church, it may not be practical, may not make sense, but it changes everything about your show, because you're suddenly able to you're not sending someone up there all the time trying to figure out where it's going to go or whatever. You're just pushing buttons, and just designing where it's going to, and then you're going to get into the designing software, and then you're going to have a grand MA, and then it's a whole other problem. So anyway, But I would highly recommend trying to save or do a car wash or do something to try to figure out how to get into movers as opposed to fixed lights. If there's any way that you can make that work. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Two things. First of all, PAR lights go in what's called a PAR 38 and a PAR 64. PAR 64 being the brighter, and then there's other scales of that, but those are the two main ones. The other thing is when you get LED lights, make sure you get an RGBW light, not just an RGB, because then that'll shine some white light into the into your mix, natural white light as opposed to artificial with the mixture of RGB.
Next question.
Next one's from Ari Block in Tel Aviv, Israel. With technology becoming better, equipment more available, especially at the prosumer level, and the increased rate of upskilling, do you see more companies looking to ramp up in-house production ability and as a result, lowering the demand for third-party professional services for online production?
So we joke about this a lot. This conversation's been going on for a decade or two. And what generally happens is there's a yo-yo that goes on with corporate video production. The corporate video production goes from we outsource it because we don't know how much we're going to do. Okay, we're doing a lot. Let's insource it. Things slow down. Why are we paying all these people on overhead? let's lay them all off and go back to outsourcing. And then it literally is just the sine wave of, for corporations of expansion and contraction. And it's been that way for 20 years, like for video production, that we're doing a lot of it. And now, so let's bring it all in. It's always some new director comes in and says, why are we outsourcing all this money? Or bring it all in, and then they bring it all in, and then someone else comes in and goes, why do we have everyone on overhead? Let's get rid of them. So that's a common thing. What I can say is there's going to be a lot more production. Where it goes is an unknown. Go ahead, Charles, and then Nigel.
Yeah, I completely agree with Alex. I've been seeing this in my industry from the graphics and the color side for 25 years, and it's the same cycle over and over and over. A part of the biggest issue that we've seen is getting the talent at the top end to stay within those companies. Yep. Where the work might not be the quality that they're used to. That becomes the big thing. So when you have a lot of large volume that is average good quality, you tend to keep those people. But when you get to the higher end, you tend to outsource, and that ebbs and flows. Of course, right now, like you said, there's a lot of new technology coming out, but it's been the same thing for the last 25 years. So I foresee the same trend continuing forward. So
go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I think what you'll see is that there's the lower end stuff that I don't think anyone would have ever really thought about outsourcing. They're going to do themselves. I think you'll see the high end stuff emerge a whole new territory, but a middle group is going to open up, which has never been there before, where people now, instead of spending $1 million on an event, can spend $100,000 on an event, and that will open up opportunities for freelancers and people to jump in.
And remember that a lot of, especially larger corporations, I don't know what it's like all over the world, but in the United States, taking on employees is a heavy lift. It's hard to, there's a lot of employment protection that makes it hard to let them go. There's a lot of liability, so on and so forth. And so what generally happens is a lot of these corporations, the AV is run by a subcontractor. Now, it's not that they're individual subcontractors, but they're outsourcing to another entity who is now providing all the services. Like a hotel doesn't do their own services. They have PSAV do that. A lot of companies here in the Bay Area use a company called ASG to do, basically, it's kind of funny because, that company does video production for all of them, and so they're, but what happens is that those companies are staffing, they're staffing the studios, they're staffing the shoots, they're staffing all those things across everything for the company so that they don't have to increase headcount. It means that they also don't have to, put it into announce that they're laying off 300 people. They just don't use that contractor anymore. So, and so that's a pretty common way. And if you're in that position, you always know that you are the front of the bus. If something goes wrong, like part of the reason that you hire freelancers is because it means that the accountability, it's like all the freelancer's fault if something goes wrong. I mean, because people have 401ks and stocks and things like that. And so, you are the expendable mercenary that you put out into the front line before everybody else. And I can say that as a former red badge, gray badge, yellow badge, orange badge. Nikki?
Yeah, I find that comparing at least my situation here in the Philippines and comparing that with North America and Europe. In North America and Europe, the majority of the expenses with the personnel, the making payroll, and actually building out facilities and equipment isn't that big of a hit to a company. And it's the total opposite here. Manpower here is relatively cheap, but equipment we're paying 2 or 3 times more, not only for the outright acquisition, but also with maintenance. So what I've been seeing is that as, like, say, a new technology ages and the facilities in North America and Europe have started to pay off in terms of depreciation, and as the equipment gets cheaper, that we're more capable of acquiring them here, the work actually starts to get outsourced.
Right.
Yeah, because it ends up like cheaper for us to get the gear, and also cheaper in terms of manpower as well.
And from a pure specialty perspective, it's way easier for me when I'm providing a service to a company. There are people that, and I think this was mentioned before, you can't hire them full time. They're not going to work for a corporation full time. But if I can get them between 2 films or between some other project that they're working on, and I can bring someone in that is way overkill for what we're doing in a given project, because they're not busy at that moment. And if you have a large network of people that you can bring in to do that, you can provide the client, even at the same cost, a much higher value than anything that they could get on their own. And the problem is that, and this is always the challenge, is if you're not doing something like coming to office hours or reading all the time or watching all the time, as soon as what you forget is when you're freelancing, you're interacting with all of these specialists all the time, and you're constantly sponging up information from them. When you go into a corporate environment, as soon as you start working in your own thing, either by yourself or inside of a corporate environment, you are losing your edge, because you're only interacting with a handful of people, at that time. Now, there are some people that are very good at keeping their edge by, again, they bring freelancers in to augment what they're doing. They're constantly reading, they're constantly paying attention to it. So they don't have to, but it's really easy because now you're on a salary and you're working on the stuff, and there's a couple of things you have to figure out. And a lot of people will start to lose, their edge will start to dull. And then that also affects the overall, not the quality, but the innovation that happens within the company. Go ahead, Alex.
I'm noticing in the UK that people seem to be reviewing long-term relationships with some of their suppliers, because freelancers I know are being called in to kind of replace companies that used to do things for a few years. This is the time in which you can kind of swing in and say, because they were thinking, well, these event companies they seem to be all hiring the similar solutions, or the solutions seem to be not distinctive enough. So I'm not really trusting that, even though these people are my friends and I've worked with them for a long time, let's actually give these other freelancers and other people a chance to see if they can do roughly the same or maybe something different or more. So there's a little opportunity there for freelancers, I think.
And that's incumbent on when you're working on these jobs is, I consider just about every job that comes here, for better or for worse, that comes to us at 090 as a bespoke project. So I design it for the client. Like, how do we make that project great for the client? Not how do I have a cookie cutter that is going to, like I can just throw them into a box and make money. Like, it's how do we make that one great, and how do we add little bits and pieces to it, and how do we innovate something inside of that and do some things that are just a little over the top, where we, at every moment. And part of that is that it creates stickiness, because I know that when they go to somebody else, they're not going to, and the more you work with me, the more I will customize my solution for that client. I'll just keep on, evolving it, and I'll get to know all the things about how they like to work and what they want to do and how they want to get all these things and put it together. And we just keep on evolving as fast as we can. If you do that, you will continue it becomes harder and harder for them to go somewhere else, because then they have to retrain somebody completely to understand their processes. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the gap between the knowledge we may all have of what's possible and what your clients might have. I mean, we talk about breakout rooms and all these things as if everybody understands what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. There's a huge gap between what's talked about here and what your average person is asking for. And so they may just not know there's a segment of opportunity that we could fill in with our knowledge that they've never seen before.
And especially if you're coming in, if you can figure out a way to do it at roughly the same price they were paying for something much less, it's really sticky, to do that again. Like breakout rooms is a really inexpensive thing to do. We just did one. I think I talked about it last week, and just that made our job easier, but it also just made their environment so much simpler. And we know that they'll go back to doing it other ways because they just used us for a stopgap, but the other way will feel very rough after that, so, and that's usually when you get return business. Next question.
Next one's from our friend here on the panel, Alex 4D Goldner of London, Europe. Thoughts on Amazon Nimble Studio? Amazon describes it as a system you can use to accelerate building a cloud-based content creation timeline. And he's got a link here.
Jonas?
It looks very interesting. It seems like they use CloudFormation, a script where you can basically describe what you want in the cloud. We started automating building of vMix machines with using that script. And that one is basically a question and answer where you can say, I need that and I need that. And then they set up a lot for you and have a few AMIs that are specialized for that use case. So it seems like it takes a bit of the implementation load off of the person that was tasked with, just do it in the cloud.
I know some folks that are working with Nimble, the Nimble platform, and they're pretty happy with it. I mean, they're definitely using it to build stuff out. I don't think I'm at liberty to talk about it just yet, but we'll try to bring them on once they get a little further along. But they've been pretty successful at using it, and it definitely makes a huge difference. Go ahead, Leland.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, to add on to that, I think we should keep an eye on Amazon's feature set coming forward, because Nice was just acquired as well, which is a display feature desktop remote control setup that I know Greg Gibson and a couple others are using already and are already in love with it. So I think we should take a look at some of the new stuff coming out of Amazon right now for video production.
Jonas?
Yeah, and especially, I think it was a week ago where they really had a AWS in Podcast Week, and they launched a new front end for AWS in Podcast, and with their CDI, they also are going a lot into the direction of broadcast companies that want to do stuff in the cloud, which seems exciting.
There's a reason we're paying a lot of attention to AWS.
Yeah.
They're probably paying more attention to what we do than anybody else right now. And they have the capacity to slowly kind of aggregate all this stuff together. Next question.
Yeah, Alex, to follow up on that, not sure if you caught that announcement that Jonas was just talking about, but CDI is their version of NDI, which is 2110 in the cloud. So they are moving broadcasters 2110 stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
Up. Yeah, it's getting amazing. So that was just announced last week.
Yeah.
Okay, next one coming in from Dave in Toronto. How did you record that office hours jam session? How did you overcome latency?
Does anyone hear that recording separately?
Yeah.
I don't have anyone who wants to jump into it. Go ahead, Mickey.
I'm one of them. Yeah, I'm on the band. We're doing the latest production this time around that will be announced as far as its release shortly, but it's all recorded individually. Everybody has to sit in their home and we do a time track. We start with drums and bass, and then we add on features as we move ahead. Vocals usually come in. For instance, on this last song, I'm doing backup, so I'm one of the last people to actually get on a recording. Mm-hmm. We do several mixes so that Pete or whoever's mixing, I believe Mike's going to be mixing the next one, have an opportunity to go through several different renditions of what we've done to make sure that it works, or cut and pull from different versions of what we have. And then there's the video aspect that is the same process. We all have to do our own videos. This time Bill's directing remotely to give us a hand on lighting and such so that we know where he wants us for his video production and everything that's in his head right now. So it's an ongoing collaboration. As it continues to grow, we learn new things and we continue to grow ourselves. So it's been a lot of fun.
And go ahead, Jeffrey.
Leland pretty much covered it all. As for latency, it's really you record at home and then you send, and then somebody sits there and nudges it right into the mix.
And I have to say that I got to hear a little what the next one is. Holy smokes! like it just I can't believe that that this is all being done for people's homes. Like it just sounds like a studio track. Like it's amazing.
It's pretty amazing what's coming together this time. Wait to hear it.
Amazing. Like I couldn't believe what I was listening to. Anyway. Go ahead, Sky.
From a visual standpoint, are you doing the performance to a playback? Because I know that's doing the good. I was hoping so, because
Yeah,
doing
we actually, I
getting your
believe,
head into the experience versus doing a visual thing is hard for people.
we're on the 5th or 6th mix actually right now, so there isn't even a final audio mix yet, and yet we're doing videos based on the 5th mix, I believe it was, and there'll probably have to be adjustments here and there as we move ahead, where people aren't showing up or are showing up that we didn't anticipate, because we're always pulling different things in and out of Pete is anyway, pulling different instruments and vocals in and out of the tracks to see what works best. So,
and I know JJ's lip sync is getting better and better every time he listens back. So,
next question.
Next one's coming in from Joe Andrews of Lebanon, Oregon. Any recommendations for a kit to set up a community room to bring in remote speakers for meetings via Zooms and Teams? Biggest needs are ease of setup by facility staff who are non-technical. Room it fits is 6 to 20, depending on the group.
So the one thing I will say is that you'll have a tendency to want to save money, but everything has to be IP controllable. Like, do not build a kit. Like, number one is you want the kit, almost everything in the kit, to be in a rack. So the less things that they have to wire together, the better. So a rack on wheels is what I would recommend there. And this is probably going to put you into not using an ATEM Mini or something like that, but like a real switcher that's going to, like an ATEM at 1ME or something like that. But the point is that, or the little production studio or whatever, but I would say a rack. Now, what we've done for those quick setups is, now this is a bigger version of it, so you can decide how far you want to go with this. But we have one rack for audio, one rack audio and comms, one rack for video, and then one rack that is just all the other things that you might need. So we try to keep it all into racks. We keep the racks under 55 inches just in case we have to put them on a plane. You don't want to try to fly with anything higher than 55 inches. And we usually keep it 50 inches just to be safe. And this little thing will save you thousands of dollars. Not that it's ever happened to me. Anyway, so the key is to keep whatever your basic equipment is in the rack. For these kind of remotes, I really recommend like X32s, rack mountables, Blackmagic switchers, that type of thing, that are very easy to control and log into remotely. Lights on DMX, Blackmagic cameras, because you can shade those cameras remotely. And so that stuff will take someone with a little bit of training 15 minutes, 20 minutes to set up. An hour, I would give them an hour, but it won't take them very long to just kind of do a basic setup of all those things to work. But what it allows you to do is that when something's wrong, you can come in from the far end. So in our case, we put Meraki's in all of them, and then we have them all, the Meraki drives, all the hardware is set to DHCP, and the Meraki uses the MAC address to address everything. That way we can go, if we need to change it, we can, but we define all those IPs remotely. Now we can go in if something's not working, and we don't have to have anybody on site to make those work. And so we used to have a fleet of, I don't know, it wasn't a huge fleet, but it was like 10 or 12 kits. And if there was any major problem, someone could go in from into the back end and make an adjustment and then pull back out again. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, and to add on to the simplicity of this sort of remote setup, you could probably do like a Zoom Rooms machine that automatically starts up with a Zoom room and automatically starts up with a remote desktop solution and maybe an NDI screen capture or something like that, so that whenever this person plugs it in, it's already starting those applications and they're ready to roll. And then they just have the Zoom Room little tablet controller that they need to interact with to bring in the remote panelist. And maybe other things that are like PoE, where they just plug things into a switch and it's getting power and signal, something like that.
You go ahead, Craig.
And although it seems pretty obvious, I think, to all of us, really, really basic thing is any interconnects that have to go out of that rack to anything else, label within an inch of its life. Really clear, big labels on the other device, like not just on the cable, but really big, this is where this one comes in. Make it really simple.
Yep. A lot of times, this is where, if we're using SDI, we color code everything. So there's lots of, if you use rear twist Neutrik connectors on your SDI, you can have lots of colors. And literally, we put the colors onto the convenience panel on the back. So, but we don't have anybody reaching into, always put a convenience panel on the back of what needs to be plugged in. but the connector matches the color that's over top of the convenience panel. You just go click, 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 click. And it makes it, even if you're experienced, it makes the whole thing much faster. So so those are things that can help a lot. Good videos on how to put it together. But you should, if you can't put it together in 20 minutes, you should keep on going back and figuring out what, for a kit like that, you should be able to set it up in 20 minutes by yourself. The other thing that we do is if there is going to be any control, like people cutting, you can get the cases can come with, make sure that the ends both have hooks so that they'll hook onto the side of the case and form into tables. That way the whole thing is self-contained. You can just set them on either side and you end up with a table on either side as well. And so we don't buy ends that don't have tables. So because it just makes it a lot easier.
Next one is from Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. What is your philosophy for picking a new technology for use in productions? Do you look for reference users? Are you an early adopter, et cetera?
Usually we're in a constant state of people, we make requests from the folks that we buy equipment from, like, hey, I need to check this out. Can you send me one of these to test? And I want to put it through its paces. And so we have a lot of stuff usually kind of moving through the lab, for those things as far as figuring things out. That's our kind of our number one, because a lot of stuff we're doing, no one else is doing. So it's hard to use it. Otherwise, communities like this, where we ask questions and people talk about what they're using. Go ahead, Jason.
So for me, it really just depends on whether or not it can fail safe. So like, this is my diagram, can it fail safe? If so, stress test it in the studio, production stress test in parallel to established methods, and then adopt with fallback if it's completely solid. If it can't, then stress test with ample time, stress test with a fail safe to make absolutely sure in the studio, and then adopt with fallback on smaller productions moving into larger ones.
And to put it in perspective, I have an event in July. We started doing stress tests last week. Like that's the, so it's, and then, for us, Matt in the kitchen is one big stress test for our system, and so just pushing things through, and we're testing pieces that we don't have to use on a day-to-day basis. Go ahead, Leland.
Yeah, I think as one who reviews a lot like Jeff does equipment that comes out on the market on a regular basis, I'm usually one that adopts late. I like to wait a couple of years for the prices to come down, because a lot of people have to realize these computer components are constantly advancing at a rate that's almost, it's exponential. So you have to really look at it from a price perspective as well. If you want to save thousands of dollars, wait a year or two until the equipment has proven itself, and then let that equipment show how good it performs by watching others use it.
Almost all my purchases come from some project that's going to not pay for it, but at least offset the cost to make it worth it. And I can see where I'm going to use that a bunch in the next little bit of time. Next question.
Next one's from Tom Charlesworth in El Dorado Hills. Can you explain line level audio signaling? What are the differences between prosumer, consumer devices, and issues using a mix of devices in the audio path?
Go ahead, Jason, and then Mickey.
The purpose of a mixer is to standardize the input and then allow you to control for the output of any input. So in this case, line level is +4, and mic level, or lesser, I guess, is -10. And you effectively use your gain to set everything to a set matched level. As far as prosumer, consumer, I don't really think it matters as long as you know how to standardize it. I'll let Mickey embellish on that.
Yep. Good, Mickey.
Yeah. There are three. I guess you'd call main reference levels for audio equipment. You have line level, which is the hottest. You have the professional line level, which is at +4 dBu, which is the hottest. You have consumer line level, which is -10 dBV, and then you have microphones, which are, it varies from microphone to microphone, but they usually play within the range of -30 to -60 dBu. So it's really quiet compared to line level. Yes, with a mixer, you would run microphones to a preamp and bring that microphone level up to line level. And most equipment that does any sort of processing or mixing runs all the signals at line level. So you always need a preamp for a microphone. And in terms of working with a bunch of different a bunch of equipment that work at different reference levels, That's what calibrating your and all your different signal chains is for. You get them all working at a similar spec, then you can more accurately start to process them or mix them together.
That's great. And usually most of us try to get to line level pretty quickly because, you know, with a very low amount of electricity going through, you're more likely to pick up noise, you know, inside of that system because it's just there's not much difference between nothing and that signal. Whereas line level is so much bigger than mic level, it can overpower a lot of those things, especially in a balanced input. And then there's other people like me that just want to get to IP as fast as possible. so I, you know, so for me, I try to get from mic or line to Dante as quickly as I possibly can. Next question.
Next one's coming in from James Babbitt in San Diego. Hi, Alex. What audio chain and lights do you use with your mobile setup?
So one of the advantages of not flying, I'm only going to LA, and this was part of the calculation was that I didn't have to. It looks like I have a little pro mist going on there. Oh, hold on, let me see. Now that I'm looking at myself, just
need the squeaky.
Exactly. So what I'm using here is I have I'm pretty sure it's a NAN light, and I just can't. It's hard for me to go around to the other side. It's a 68. So NAN light 68 is the one that I have with me. This is the ProMaster. I always forget. It's either LSCT or LTCS or CS. As LS, C, and T in the thing, but I can't remember. I can never remember the order because I don't know what it means. Anyway, so I use that as a light stand because it's just really, really flexible. So I carry this. I have a 1650 because I'm driving. I didn't have to check it, so I pulled a 1650 out of my garage and threw a bunch of stuff into it. So I have that light, and then I have a Brio. I'm using a Brio. I have a 6K here for some other things that I'm doing that I may try to use tomorrow, but I just didn't have time. I got in late last night. And then I have a Mix Pre 3, which for some reason I grabbed a Mix Pre 3 from the office that doesn't have noise assist on it. That's part of my problem today. I thought that they all had them on it, but evidently this one doesn't. So anyway, so I have a Mix Pre 3, and then this is a Countryman mic and this is part of this Mix Pre and the Countryman mic and a headset and everything else is all in a little bag that I just have that I just grab onto that and go. And then I'm using a Brio for the camera. I'm using my old laptop, my old 15-inch, just because I like to leave it kind of set up so I don't have to think about it. So I don't need it at work or where I'm working today. And then technically I have my carry-on bag, which is one of those, I don't know, away bags or whatever, is the stand for the laptop. So it sits right underneath. It's at the proper height. So once it's emptied out, I just set it there, and I found that in a hotel it works pretty well. And then I am using the hotel light on that side as just like that. That's just a hotel light. And then I didn't bring these. It's a hotel room, just came with them. But that's pretty much the whole signal. I'm on wireless. There's nothing I can do about it. And so I don't know how bad it has been, but I do come to this hotel because the bandwidth in general is pretty good, better than most hotels. So anyway, that's my signal chain. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Alan Snyder in Cedar Rapids. He asks, I have a disability that causes me problems remembering things. Can the panel give recommendations on locally installed software for Mac, preferably, and Windows that can record the screen, video and audio, and local webcam video and mic/audio meetings like our Zoom, but also for content/training?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
QuickTime on the Mac does this wonderfully, and it's built into Mac OS. On Windows 10, you can actually enable screen recording as part of the Xbox add-on that is part of every Windows 10 installation. So either way, I would go as bare metal as you can, and luckily both operating systems already have it.
The one thing is it can fill up your hard drive, and it can use up a lot of CPU to be capturing your screen. Really do think also about just an outboard recorder that you can have with an HDMI out. Courtney will probably have a great suggestion.
Yeah, here's one that I just got. It's a standalone recorder, so it doesn't require, and it has all kinds of inputs. It has HDMI in, it has component video in, and composite video in. But if you're using an HDMI monitor, you just route through this, and you plug in an SD card or a USB stick, in this case, right there, and that becomes your recording drive. And whenever you want to capture something, you just hit the button. And it's that simple. It works with a Mac or a PC, so you can take it from machine to machine, and pretty fits in your suitcase.
How much was that again?
What? I'm sorry, what?
How much was that again?
It's like $89.
Yeah. I think I would really suggest an outboard recorder, especially something that's $89 over recording constantly to your drive. You'll be constantly dealing with just drive management. Go ahead, Leland.
Yeah, just with regards to the software that Alex is not recommending, and he has a good point. I stuff my drives with files all the time with things that I capture here regularly. Mono Snap is one free tool that you can use to do video and snaps. Tiny Take is the other, totally free of charge, and they should work on both systems.
Question?
Oh, Digit Now is the name of this one. I just mentioned. You can find them on.
Oh, go ahead, John Preto.
So the two not pro apps, I would say prosumer apps, is ScreenFlow for the Mac and Camtasia for the PC. They've got full editing capability, zooming capability, et cetera, et cetera. They're both two good pieces of software.
Good guy.
Yeah, and then the ATEM ISOs, the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, and then I just loaned Sky one of the ATEM Mini Extreme ISOs to record Mad in the Kitchen. Hopefully we can do that and see, 4 cameras just for archive, or maybe somebody might want to edit that stuff. But it'll be fun to see because the files are pretty lightweight. I believe it's 70 megabits per second. So even at 4 cameras, so if he's recording, just 2, like I would probably do like an iPad into just as my Zoom contribution. So that would become my HDMI out of the iPad through like a USB-C cable, and then record into an ISO because it's lightweight, it's reliable. You can use a SSD, like one of the little T7s from Samsung. So Sky, you need to pick one of those up, T7, either T5 or T7.
I have 2 of them, one for my 4K, and so we got that.
Plug it in, run some tests this week, and let's get it on. All right.
Yeah, we plug that in. Thank you.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Dave in Toronto. Any suggestions for sharing or syncing iCloud photo libraries with 2 or more people? My wife and I want every photo from all of our devices to end up in the same iCloud library, accessible from all of our devices without sharing an AppleID.
I think that used to be done. I think normally it's a shared album. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Alex is right. A shared album will absolutely do this. The other way to do it is if one person has iCloud Family, keep in mind, you are not going to be intermingling anything. You can have iCloud Family on the main account and then adopt a sub-account, give them both admin, and then pick what each one shares to the other one. The other lo-fi way to do it is if you just share the entire album of your photo stream with each other. A shares to B, B shares to A. That too will do it. It gets much trickier though. So, try with a smaller album, try with a test account if you don't believe me. And then I think iCloud Family is going to be your best way to go.
Next question.
Got a weird click
from
going on, Chase.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana, was shooting outdoor footage and now want a better external monitor for my B cam. What are the panel's recommendations for a 7 to 10 inch camera monitor 4K?
All right, go ahead, Charles.
I'm a big fan of the Blackmagic Assist. I think the nits is at 2,500 nits, which is great for outdoors, and it's 7 inches. Atomos has one that does 3,000 nits, which is also nice in 7 inches. On higher end productions, we end up attaching some sort of like a Teradek and giving the clients iPads with the Teradek app, and they could just wander about. But for on camera, I think the Blackmagic and the Atomos, and also the Small HD, I've used a few of those, but I don't believe they have one that goes as bright as the Blackmagic or the Atomos Ninja.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I was going to chime in with the Atomos as well. They've got some great products and internal recorders with ProRes, recording, and it's really good.
Next question.
Next one's a two-parter from Chris Earl. We'll start off with the first one. It says, let's see, and he's in Maitland, Florida. If I am using my ATEM Mini to assemble all my sources to send out as a single webcam, and the webcams in quotes, to my work Zoom meetings, as it's most basic switching between my camera, my computer, sharing slides, code, or a key super source combination of both, what is the best way to present that content in Zoom?
I guess he's got a part two that's, I guess, both,
Okay,
before they came, yeah, like, well, okay, we'll do the first. Is it different? Is it a different question or is it a?
We'll
I think
see. I
it
haven't read
is.
through it all. It's kind of long. Should I just keep my camera feed and expect the audience to pin me once I start presenting content, share my screen, and select my camera as the content? And in this case, should I optimize for video or not? And is there a shortcut to toggle that or something else?
I think I would spotlight myself if I was going to do that, to kind of, people can, if you're in a meeting and not a webinar and you spotlight yourself, people have the choice of turning it off. Like they can go back to the gallery view if they want, but it will fill it, you know, it will fill the screen so that the natural behavior will be to watch the screen. Now, if you're doing screen, you can also, well, I think if you screen share and prioritize video, you would also be able to, you would get video frame rate and would take over the screen and put everybody onto one side as well. So that might be another way to create that behavior, you know, into that process. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
Keep in mind to check your resolution of the meeting you're in, because if it's just 360p and you share your videos through that, that your video feed will suffer. If you can pull it off with just your screen share, and then you will have a lower frame rate than when you go directly to your camera. So you have to decide what you want, resolution or frame rate.
Yeah. And if most of what you're doing is graphics, then, you know, that you're showing, then you can, I would go for resolution. And if you're mostly you talking or showing videos, obviously frame rate. So those are the things you have to kind of make a decision. And remember that if you have a Zoom room or portal, something jump in, you'll get 720 and video at the same time. so you can, you know, having a Zoom room, you know, jump in. That's kind of our little trick right now to kind of bump our stuff up. The Guy Cochran trick of
Actually,
making
it's
that
the
work.
Jonas to tell trick. If you he wants to share a little site that he has that might bump that resolution up. You want to tell him about that, Jonas, that he can do?
Yeah,
to
when you
test it?
go to meetingmeters.com and input your meeting link, then we'll bump it up for you. We are currently running a beta on that.
There we go, meetingmeters.com. So that you can actually you'll get meters, and you'll have it'll bump things up a little bit. So so definitely check that out. So that's a way to bring up that resolution to make that work. One thing I will say overall is that one of the trends that we're seeing right now is that presentations, you know, are really not working. like I don't know if they ever worked, but, and I've said this before, like, oh, like we should stay away from them, but we're seeing cold hard data on just how devastating slide decks are to viewership. It's just, so if you start tracking, you know, 10 years ago, we tracked people's eyes, like where are they looking while they're watching? And we saw that within 60 to 90 seconds of a slide going up, no one was paying attention anymore. Like they were all doing something else. They're checking their email. They're doing something else. They're off somewhere, you know, doing something other than listening to you. So you just want to kind of keep that in mind when you're trying to get information out. You're better off flipping the classroom, even on your presentations, putting videos out, and then having conversations. Like that's what keeps our lower brain in active listening mode. Throwing up stills is a way to put it into passive listening mode really fast. So we just want to keep that in mind too. But the thing you're doing with super sources and things popping around and talking about things and moving around, that's, as long as you're feeding a lot of information, it works. I think that the presentation we saw about the HBO documentary I think was that last week? It feels like a century ago. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, was amazing. And that is an example of how to use super sources, like the way, you know, like, and animations and so on and so forth, and really good slides and so on, to talk about something in detail. But the thing to always remember is to come back and talk to the audience as often as you can. Like, don't you don't want a 45-minute presentation. You want a 5-minute presentation and discussion, and a 5-minute presentation and discussion. And that 5 minutes better be really good. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Keenan here on the panel from Princeton, Illinois. Asks USB-C cables. What brands does everybody like and use? Primarily for ATEM Extreme ISO. Anchor has already failed. Amazon links are appreciated.
Most of the cables that I use now are unis. They have very technical. I'm very technical. They have woven. They're not rubbery. They're woven, which I like a lot. So that's why I started getting them. But they've been successful over and over and over again. I have all kinds of different ones now. I have yet to have them fail. I actually don't have any in this kit, but at home I have all my HDMI to USB-Cs and so on and so forth. They're all my HDMIs, my HDMI to USB-Cs, and so on and so forth are all unis at this point. I don't know if anyone has another opinion. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I just found mine that was sitting here. I think it's Fazgear it was an Amazon. I can look up the link. It's another one of the braided nice cables. Thing we've mentioned before that's come up is when you're buying USB-C cables, you really have to make sure that they're full speed. There's a whole bunch that are still only 480, and there's some that are just power only. So there's a lot of confusion and a lot of unclear especially when you look on Amazon, a lot of the ads aren't really clear about what speed the cables spec to.
Right. Go ahead, Mickey. Did you?
Yeah, I've had pretty good luck with the house brand of B&H, Purestone. They have a bunch of them that are rated for USB 3.1 and I think they go up to 6 feet.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Alex Forty Goldner in London, Europe. What social media service allows you to create templates for multiple platforms so the same text and pictures can be used in images and animations suited to each platform?
Go ahead, Jason.
Amazon Spark is the one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, John Barker.
I use Figma for all of my design stuff, and they actually have a community section where people have built some stuff like that. So I posted a link just in Mukana just now, where someone's already made a file that you add some stuff to, and you're able to export all of the pictures that you want based on different social media things. It might not be exactly what you're looking for, but something to get you started with, maybe.
And can you spell that out, Figma? Oh, can't hear you.
Figma, Figma.
Great. Next question.
Yeah, and just notice that I had noise assist at -20, so now it's at a -11. So you guys might notice a difference in this next one. So next one's coming in from Dave Kaufman in Vancouver, BC. In yesterday's office hours, Alex drew the video flow for Bad in the Kitchen and showed breakout rooms for each cook, then Zoom rooms inside each breakout. What's the purpose of the Zoom room here versus NDA, the breakout room itself?
Well, we need something. So when they go into that breakout room, I need some computer in that breakout room to pull that video out. So you have to have some computer in there, and we use Zoom rooms because we have more control over how the monitoring goes out of the computer. And it also, when we first got them, it was because they would guarantee us 1080p. We would probably get that now, but the display options and our ability to control all the pieces without an interface is important to us because we don't want that interface to go to. So the breakout or a Zoom room means the interface is actually in a tablet in front of the monitor, not in the interface, and so not in the video output. So it gives us a variety of controls, and you'll never see a mouse on the Zoom room. So that's why we use the Zoom rooms. And if you're using multiple breakout rooms, you still need another computer. The computer running the Zoom can't get into all the breakout rooms at one time. So if you want access to each one individually, you need to have some kind of computer in each one. We choose Zoom rooms, which are just Dell PCs that jump into those. Next question.
Next one's from Tony Mobley in Noonan. Where is the best place to share the solution to the audio dropout of iPad Pro? For 6 weeks, could solve the issue. Thanks, office hours, for all your help. Or couldn't solve, he says in the note. I'm not sure what this.
Go ahead, Jason.
I would say upload a YouTube video and absolutely just put it in, put it in the Discord so we can all see how you did it.
I think that what we found when we were DXing that was it had to do, I think we decided it had to do with the AirPods. It was finding or turning off Bluetooth in general made it go away, I believe. I think that's what we solved because it was finding a Bluetooth headset somewhere when it was picked up. Go ahead, Chris.
DXing? What's that stand for? You just said
DXing.
Diagnosing.
It's diagnosing. Yeah, I mean, DXing usually is what we call. I was like, I don't know what it actually stands for. Just in our the nomenclature is you call it DXing when you're diagnosing.
So I think one of the things that's a problem in tech in general is that everybody throws their hands up, screams, and help me, I need help, it's urgent, it's urgent. But when they find the answer, they don't share it. And
so go, Tony.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Tony was screaming. He was so flustered. I know I helped him a little bit with it, but yeah, it's really a good idea. I like what Jason just said. Make a video about it. Post it.
And I think that's what we hope is one of the values of what we're doing here is that as we learn things, we're injecting all of that learning back into the group. Like so when we figure these things out together, a lot of us remember it. It's a community thing. I don't know if we'll make in the real world of production. The problem is as soon as you solve the problem, you're off to the next problem. Stopping and making videos is something that sounds like a good idea, but even I have a list of YouTube videos that's literally right now 80 long. These are 80 videos that as soon as I have a little time, I'm going to make, and so but literally you'll see me every once in a while type away because someone will say something and I can make a video about that. And I have this long list of notes of all these things. Or if I'm on my phone, I'll be sitting in like a studio we're doing when I'm down here and I'll type. I have this one pinned note that is just all the things that I think would be interesting as a video. And so time, that kind of thing becomes an issue. I'm thinking of just getting Hosmux people to do it. Let's see if we get Hosmux crew to start putting these together. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I'm not sure if Google transcribes and searches video programs like ours, but most manufacturers, of course, have forums in their support areas, and Google search then crawls all of those forums. So if you're looking for a solution to a problem, you'll usually land on it there with a Google search. Be very specific in your Google search terminology, and usually you'll land on it something like that. And if you find a solution, be sure and post it in the forum in a text format so that the Google spiders can find it and help other people out.
Next question.
Next one's from Chris Rosden in Round Rock, Texas. At our studio, we run HDMI from camera through a hole in the wall to the switcher. Is it worth setting up a 8 to 16 HDMI patch panel for more flexibility and easier replacing of cables? Or should we stick with running through the wall? If patch panel, build my own, or is there something to buy?
Go ahead, Jason.
I have never run an HDMI patch panel through a wall. And if that's working for you, I applaud you. That scares the crap out of me.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I don't know. I would go SDI.
Mickey?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. If you're gonna actually do an installation, switch over to at the minimum coax SDI, and that would give you A, future proofing, and also B, more stability with your connections.
Next question.
Next one's from Sky Gleason here on the panel. Alex, what is the Audio Technica connector for the Pile mic headset, please?
If someone could find a link for it, I don't, right now, I have to admit I brought a smaller than average, I brought the power supply for this older computer that can't keep up with Zoom and everything else opened at the same time. So I'm running out of power. So I don't have anything open other than Zoom, and I might have to drop out. So we'll see how that goes. But if someone can post it into there, it's audio.
Mukana would be great.
Yeah, if you can post it into Mukana, that'd be great. It is a Audio Technica USB to 1/8-inch jack converter. It should be about $20-25. It's on Amazon. Yep. Next question.
Next one's from Bobby Rafferty in Rockville, Maryland. I am relocating states in the near future. Any recommendations on packing all the tech equipment?
Carefully. You know, one of the jobs that I didn't think was going to be that important when I first got out of high school that turned out to be really important was shipping and receiving for an electronics company. So I spent, you know, it's all I did was ship and receive, you know, just build boxes for electronic components. And the big thing you just learn is that you want to think about everything being dropped 3 feet. So if you're having, especially if you have a service to it, but you want to think about, you know, everything dropping 3 feet and what would happen if those things were dropped. So where the screens are and everything else. We tend to put plexiglass over screens, you know, just tape them over or whatever, just so there's something that's there to absorb those. And the big thing is no metal touches metal. You know, like that's a huge one. Like metal just has a way of really getting to each other and denting them and destroying them and mostly transferring a lot of energy between them. So no metal against metal. Separate your most expensive and fragile components away from everything else so that they have their own boxes, and then they're very well padded. And the other stuff is mostly well padded. You know, obviously blankets and neoprene and all these things are really useful, but especially with the electronics and anything that's fragile, you know, you're going to have to take the time to put it together, you know, take the time to pack it well. I mean, basically you take the time to pack it all yourself and pack it well, and the crew come in and do whatever they're going to do. But generally that's been, you know, how we've handled that. Go ahead, Jason.
Label or photograph everything that goes into each box, put it in a folder, share that folder to Dropbox, and put a QR code, you know, on the outside of the box or the inside of the box. That way you know what's in each box.
Yeah. And writing what's going into them. Again, for the stuff that matters. You don't have to do it with everything that was in every folder everywhere, but for the stuff that matters, definitely labels on the outside of boxes is super useful. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, try to pick up a couple Pelican cases for the more fragile stuff. Maybe go with the ones with the padded dividers as opposed to the pick and pluck, so that you could reuse them for different purposes after the move is done. And also take a look at flight cases from places like Brady cases as well. And also, when you're transporting displays, as much as possible, transport them upright, especially like for larger displays. You don't want them lying down where the panel can actually flex as it's being transported.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say what Alex said about dropping 3 feet. This right here is my $10,000 iMac Pro in this case. And this is video of the airline guys. He sees this one. And he's like, yeah, I don't care what's in here. I could care less. And boom. Ouch. I just happened to be looking out the window as he threw it.
I try to do videos of those all the time, and I used to send them to people in our office to remind them of, like, just remember, like, it is very clearly our Pelican cases, and the bigger and heavier your cases are, the harder they are managed, because the folks managing those don't angry. Like them. They're angry that you checked it and didn't ship it somewhere, and they take it out on your bag. Go ahead, Charles.
I had something very similar happen. I had my laptop. I was coming back from a project, and they made me check my book bag. Like, okay, so we're on the tarmac, and I see the guy drop the bag on the floor and back up the truck that he's driving over the bag as security starts to come out, because I start to walk out onto the tarmac, about to have a confrontation with the guy on the tarmac. Yeah, I'm very skittish about mailing.
You will lose that confrontation every time, by the way, Charles.
They had it on video, and the guy actually ran off because he saw me coming out. So I'm actually very skittish about mailing stuff. I tend to keep as much of the packaging for my higher end products that they come in as possible. I can do that more now because I've got a big house. But I would follow Mickey's advice, get some Pelican cases, see what you can do. If you are mailing or transferring spinning drives, I've had some horrible experiences that we've talked about. So I'd just be cautious about those. They tend to fail after some travel.
Next question. Oh, go ahead. Noah, real quick.
Yeah. This might be super common sense, but you want to fill the space in the box that you have, because if not, it could move within that space. So.
Yep, absolutely. Chris,
Yeah.
last thing, and then we'll move on.
Last thing, I will tell you, anecdotally, I have found that in that same Pelican case, I can fit a lot of hotel towels. I'm just saying.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, and I just got to ask now, how big are you in real life, Charles? Because I'm looking at you on this screen, you're like this big, and it doesn't seem very intimidating, but you marching down the tarmac, I get this bigger sense of Charles.
I'm a 6'1", 220, and I'm mostly muscle. So it's and I'm brown.
Yeah.
So
all right, next question.
Next one's coming in from Greg Yotes. What is a good wheeled rack or portable rack system?
I don't know whether the question is what is the rack system? The system is usually something that we build, so I don't know of a rack system that's there. I'd have to look at the ones that we have as far as what we build. But we start with the racks, then we start building them out. So what I would say is, again, if you're only going to take them locally, then we make them pretty tall. We'll make them, a solid 72 inches high, things that we can comfortably reach to the top part, but it's easier to put into a truck. Whereas we keep them, anytime we think we may put them on a plane, we keep them at 50 to 55 inches and generally 50 inches high. Then after that, it's just a matter of very careful racking. One of the things we think about is what components are interacting with each other, so that those can be a little closer together than the others, so that shorter wires. And then, what has to go out to convenience panels. So you have to think about, they're not all crossing over each other. We tend to separate video and audio when we can into two different racks. And then we usually have another rack that is like shelving. You can actually get nice drawers for your racks, and it's nice having a rack that has drawers and having a rack that has a printer. Super useful. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. When picking supplies for our manufacturers for equipment racks, especially those that are meant, for being portable, look for ones that use rails that are double extruded, meaning that there are two pieces of metal that actually sandwich the plywood, as opposed to just having one side, the outer side, being metal and the inside just being wood. Because when you have them double extruded, they are actually riveting between those two metal pieces instead of just one side metal and wood on the other side.
One of the other things to think about, and most of ours are built, we send a spec and then it's out of LA, and I'll try to find who maybe we'll bring them on to have them talk about it. But we just send down a spec of this is how high, and this is many you and this many things, and they just build them for us and send them to us. But the one of the other things you have to decide on is whether you want to have the server style, like if you want the threading to be in the rack or not in the rack. And everybody goes different directions on this. There is a convenience to having the threading in the rack, and a lot of our racks have had that. As we've gone further along, the problem really is if you strip one, that one's not going to be useful anymore, or you have to retap it, or there's a whole bunch of things about it. And so the other side of that is that when you get the server racks that you have to put in your own threading for every single unit, it takes 3 times longer to set up, to build the rack. So I will say that 80%, 90% of our stuff has been, threading in the racks, just because because of speed, of how often we were doing the racks. Now, one of the things that we did is that we generally screw everything in while the rack is laying down. So we lay the rack down, and then it's much easier to set up all your components, figure out where they are, decide that all is a good idea. And then we screw them in, and we very carefully screw them 2 corners, mostly, and then the other 2, and then we tighten them all in. But we do it very slowly to make sure that they all fit really nicely. The other thing is that we never used the screws twice. So we never reuse our old screws. There used to be huge jars of old screws that we would use for something, but we wouldn't use them for the rack again. When we pulled them out, we put new ones in. They're not very expensive, and for us anyway, they were cheaper than accidentally stripping them. And remember that there's 10 size screws and 12 size screws, and if a new shop hand doesn't know the difference, it's really hard on the rack. Anyway, John, and then Leland.
Yeah, one thing to consider if you're anything like me and working in old European cities is that sometimes you may have to carry this thing up a few stairs. And so when you're designing this stuff, it might be worth considering the overall weight with all of the equipment inside. And if you or a friend can carry it up a few stairs, in my case, it's not so easy. Maybe Charles, all muscle, you might find it a bit easier than me.
Yeah, definitely. That is one of the arguments for the shorter racks because they're much more manageable. And with load-ins, we think about it all the time, of what that looks like. And I think I talked about it one time. We had one that was a 4-inch from the side that we shot the photo of. You couldn't see it because it just looked like it was the path completed, but there was a 4-inch gap where it dropped down, and all of our stuff had to come the other way across it. It turned into a big problem for us, so you just, so bigger, heavier racks do become something you have to consider. Go ahead, Noah.
And just watch too, with regards to the wheels that you're going to have on these rolling racks, make certain that you're getting quality wheels with bearings, preferably rubber type wheel structures rather than the hard plastics, because those do tend to crack and age and break over time. And always check them. Make sure they have locks as well, because when you have this much heavy equipment in a rolling cart, it will roll downhill very fast. So make sure you got locks.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I was just going to talk. I actually ended up building a custom cart system for myself. And so I would love to talk about that one day. But yeah, it's a full project and customized from the ground up. So.
We're going to have to, someone put that in the second hour. Well, we could definitely talk about this subject for an hour. Go ahead, John, and then Chris.
One last thing. Whenever you see those wheels starting to crack in any way, fix them. Don't take them out on a gig because speaking from experience, if it breaks, it's a real pain.
Oh my gosh, I folded one in a rock and roller outside the White House, and through snow and salt, we had to pull that thing out of the White House with that. And then the next year when we had to come back, there's nothing worse than having someone in the White House go, "Are you going to bring a cart with 4 wheels this time?" It's like not the conversation you want to have. Go ahead, Chris.
I had finished a long day, a long week in Long Beach. I had one more night before I drove home. I had personal gear. I didn't want to leave it in my car overnight. I went wheeling it through the hotel lobby. I was just going to take one rack up to my room, and the security tried to stop me. "Sorry, you can't bring that through the lobby." And I, without missing a beat, I looked at him and I said, "It's okay. These are hotel wheels." And I kept going for the elevator lobby. And he was, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Ever try to take a cart through 4 seasons? I can tell you, they take it real personally. All right, next question.
Hotel wheels.
Next one's from Lalik Miguel Lopez Waterman in New York. I would like a mount for my Blackmagic Design Pocket Cinema camera for the desk. What do you all use? What I'm looking for is a robust mount that can clamp to the desk and be strong enough if I ever end up with a teleprompter setup. Recommendations welcome.
Teleprompter setup for a mount. The thing to remember is that as you start to put that kind of weight on it, you're now talking about, you're moving from the problem with the mount to the problem with the bar, arm, or whatever, to the actual desk that you're attaching it to. You're going to start stressing that connection a lot. Go ahead, Charles.
I would perhaps reconsider attaching it to the desk, just because any little motion that you bring to the desk will show up on camera, which is probably not the best. I would consider some of the Matthews or I forgot the other company, but Matthews has a lot of equipment that you could probably get. It's like a high roller light stand and get some of their clamps. I got a bunch in the back over there, and those things will hold me, Alex, Guy, and Courtney without breaking a sweat. So I would probably go in that direction.
Triad Systems makes really heavy duty compact. So we bought a bunch of them for our Ozos because you needed to have the tripod really low. So what the cool thing about Triad is that they have these tripods that have a very long neck, but a very short base or very small base. And so it's really, and that's what sits behind my desk, is a Triad, because it's a very, very small footprint, very stable and heavy. Don't travel with it. But it sits right off my desk, and to the point that way it doesn't shake. And it's a really heavy heavily built and very customizable. You can have the legs go flat to the ground, or you can have them pull up. There's a lot of different options there. So it's not the cheapest solution, but those things they're made to last. I mean, they're heavy duty. Next question. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Guy.
actually, that's the same system I'm using as the Triad Orbit, and I do have it off the desk because of what Charles said. It shakes the desk and shakes the camera. So my tripod, or I'm not using a tripod, it's a Triad Orbit stand with the wheel, so I can wheel it out if I have to, and then it's adjustable up and down, and then the teleprompter sits on it with the camera inside on a sled, and that's the system. It's pretty slick and robust. It's heavy duty.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Matthews has a bunch of 75 millimeter and 100 millimeter tripod bowl head adapters that you can mount with whatever grip equipment you want. Like maybe a wise solution would be using 3 grip arms to hold the bowl head up, and that should be able to carry a camera with a prompter system adequately.
Next question.
Next one's from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. How could a karaoke DJ host a karaoke event in Zoom where an ISO backing track gets fed to a singer with headphones, and then their mic and backing track get ISO'd back separately to the DJ for mixing and feeding out to the Zoom audience, all using Zoom?
I could almost answer that question because I just came across a site that is just that. It was recently announced, but I'll have to go find the name of the site I just witnessed. So I'll get back to that person shortly.
I think you could do this with breakout rooms. So I think you'd have a couple computers, because here's the deal: is you can't do it live. There's too much latency. You would have to feed the music to the person, let them sing to that music. So the video would be the text of the karaoke, and the music would go into there, and then you'd pull them. Oh, yeah, that wouldn't work. I don't know if you could feed it to them. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, you would, in
you
whatever solution you pick, to be able to do this, you need either software or hardware on the singer side of things for them to be able to feed the play out music, the karaoke music back into Zoom for the DJ to mix it.
Yeah, but I think that it has to be, they have to sing to the song as it comes to them and then goes back out again. So you're right. There has to be software on their end to pull it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, they would have to mix it at the singer's location, mix the music and their voice together, and then the composite of that goes back to the DJ and he plays it for the people.
Yeah, because you get, that's how you defeat otherwise there's latency issues. Yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Edgar Mohn in Berlin. Experiencing different behavior feeding the AME's still storage. Is there a reason why images exported directly from Photoshop are transitioned slower than pings loaded into the ATEM? When doing super source transitions with alpha mask, the Photoshop exports transition too slow, so you see the borders.
I don't know if it's going too slow. I think it's the alpha channel. So I don't think it's a slow problem. I will say that I know that the ATEM saves this stuff out, and maybe John knows about this better, but what we have found is that the alpha channel management in anything other than a TGA is not always going to work. Other than a TGA generated from After Effects, to be specific, or Photoshop, Motion does not export a proper TGA. Well, what Motion does is you export it via compressor, and you end up with a compressed TGA that's not readable. And the ping files, the edges are all rough. They're not. And I think it has to do with a straight alpha versus pre-multiplied, and that interaction. If you're really doing soft edges, if you really want it to work, I find that the best solution is always a pre-multiplied TGA file. It seems to work every single time. Pings are kind of like, sometimes it works and you're like, oh, that's great, but a lot of times they have rough edges. That's been. I don't know if John has anything to add to that, or Jonas.
Yeah, often whenever I import PNGs, they're not what I want them to be. So yeah, exactly. I don't have any experience with the Photoshop specific plugin, but you might want to try to save whatever file was saved into the media pool. you could save those settings and take a look at that file and compare it to another PNG that you saved out of Photoshop, you know, in the traditional sense,
Well,
and
and I
see
don't
what the
think
file sizes are, maybe to see if there's a slower load in on a bigger file size.
yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
And from an SDK standpoint, it's totally different how they load it from the plugin than they load it via the software control. So they might create them differently on the ATEM itself, like add another layer when you do it over Photoshop. That's possible too. So that it loads 2 layers instead of 1.
I'm going to swap computers. So I'm going to let Guy do the next question, and I'll be right back.
Next one's coming in from Brad Dre in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I am familiar with the 3-2-1 backup system that Leo Laporte talks about, but what is the best way to back up photos, videos in the Apple ecosystem? Does anyone use iCloud photo library? And anybody going to raise your hand so I can call on you? There we go, Jason Beige.
All right. Hopefully my sync isn't horrible, and stop me if it is, because that makes me crazy. Yeah, the 3-2-1 backup system is just a common way of doing this. And yeah, iCloud is the easiest way if you want a single way to do it that is relatively fail-safe. It's worth mentioning that you should also add on that if you have an iOS device, to satisfy 3-2-1, you need to plug in physically and back up so that you have the original and 2 backups. You have an original setup that is also on a separate hard drive. If not, you're not satisfying that.
We didn't want to stop you, but your sync is really bad.
All right, we'll go ahead. Scotty, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do use that that resource, but it's not free, and you do pay for the storage. But my phone takes a picture, it goes up to the cloud. It's now sitting on my laptop. It's now sitting on my my PowerBook. So, but they do also do some compression concepts. So it's a lot deeper than I'm aware of, but it is a tool of how to do kind of a Dropbox concept and keep your photos in different locations and
right.
videos as well.
Mickey, you want to add on?
Yeah, I myself, I just back up my photos to the Photos app on a Mac. That Mac gets backed up to Synology, and then that Synology gets backed up to another Synology in the office. And on top of that, every now and then I do just copy and paste that Photos library to just a standard drive.
All right, next one's coming in from Nigel DeSalle here in Austin on the panel and in Austin, Texas. I need to put a TV on a rolling stand. Anything I should know before I buy? Chris Fenwick?
I will tell you this, that if you are in junior high and ever get caught pushing a TV between rooms on a rolling stand, girls will never talk to you.
Keenan Campbell?
AV nerd.
I'm sorry. That's hard to follow. We just did that with a 70-inch touchscreen, and we used the Trip Light brand. It was about $500. Really solid extruded aluminum. We actually take it in a trailer with us on deployments, and don't skimp out on it. The Trip Light one, I can post I'll put a link to the model we used in Mukana.
Yeah, how big, Nigel, is the television?
It's only about a 55, but it's got to go between 3 rooms. So it just seemed easier. And you can get them for like $75, and I'm just worried it's going to go bang.
Charles, you want to add?
Yeah, I've on set we've used some of the Kupo runway rollers with some of the stands. It's similar to Matthews. I actually have one here that I have one for my light. Let me see if I can get this to work. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So this it's only about $150, $160, but on set we've used it to hold up to a 75-inch TV, and it rolls really, really smooth. I think with the attachments and everything, was up to $200. It's just hardy, just industrious.
Court?
Yeah, and just a tip, if you are going to roll it between rooms, lower it down to its lowest height before you start to move it, because a 55-inch TV, depending upon the brand, raised up, 6 feet in the air, is going to go over. You hit a little pebble with a wheel. Goodbye.
Noah, did you want to add anything on?
Yeah, just to make sure you have counterweights or something at the base, kind of like Courtney's talking about now, if you're moving it. We do some televisions for an outdoor service for a church, and yeah, even with like 4 bags, like almost 100 pounds, like they're pretty close to tipping over.
All right, next one's going to be coming in from Roberto Barrow in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. I was given a 2010 13-inch MacBook Pro that heats up quickly, requiring the fan to ramp up. Would opening up the unit and blow out the dust help? If so, how often do you all do that? Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for my laptops and also my desktops, I open them up like once a year or once every 2 years just to blow them out, clean it out. And like when I actually do replace a laptop, the old one, I open it up and replace the thermal paste as well.
I see Roscoe said depends on the inside, and I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand, Guy. One thing, as someone who's built computers, PCs specifically for the last 35 years, I highly recommend you at least get that dust and the bunnies and the webs that form inside your fans, your heat sinks, etc., because your machine is being taxed extremely as it heats up. If you're not watching the heat of your unit, the motherboard heat, the CPU heat, the extra fans you may need, all of those things need to be cleaned regularly to maintain a proper temperature inside your PC. I highly recommend to do it at least once a month.
All right, next question.
Are you back online, Alex? So we can
I'm
toss
back
this one
online.
from James Babbitt. Okay, right. This one's coming direct to you from James Babbitt in San Diego. Hi, Alex. Could you give us a link to watch the production during the rehearsal on Friday?
During the rehearsal? Yeah, we'll do the rehearsal.
Alex, I think you might be on your computer microphone.
Oh man, I had it. Does that sound better? Yeah, a little better. That tells you the difference. But why we use a mic? Yeah, we'll put up a link. We'll get that up. Just someone. I'll get it up into the next thing that goes out on Tuesday. We'll set up a separate meeting so that you can watch the rehearsal. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's from Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois. When will the Office Hours website be launched with bios of the panel? Seems like it would tie YouTube, Zoom, Mukana, Discord all together.
The website will be up by the end of the month. It has to be for a variety of reasons. The bios of the panel will probably take a little longer. The website will just be there to kind of gather things and give people somewhere to go other than YouTube or Zoom, and then we'll keep on expanding from there. But we eventually have bios, hopefully for everybody. But bios will slowly pull out after that. Next question.
James Babbitt, San Diego. Hi, Alex. For your shows, how often is calling the show and cutting the show done into different locations, such as Mad in the Kitchen with Nate Hill calling the show in Salt Lake City, Utah, and you cutting the show in San Rafael, California?
Recently, over the last year, it's become very common. Before that, although, I mean, it is something that it's not like it's never happened before. Pac-10, for instance, has been doing it probably for the last 10 years. And so where they basically, like, if you look at a Pac-10 game that isn't one of the major football teams, you're pretty much looking at something that is cameras that are being backhauled to San Francisco. The director and a lot of the other folks are all there. So building that distributed connection is not something that is, that new. We call it REMI production, and that's been building up for a while, but it exploded over the last year and probably won't ever be able to be recontained. And so using it for Zoom and other things like that is something that's a little bit new, but it's not totally uncommon. And it probably, once people realize that they could do it, it provides so much freedom for so many people that it is highly probable that we'll never go back to all built in. I think that it'll just keep going that direction, as opposed to coming back to what it was before. It's just way more efficient, and so to bring Nate in, so Nate and I are working together today and tomorrow in Los Angeles, and we both had to, come in, he flew in, I drove in. to work together. And that's an extra cost to the production or to us, or however we set it up, for dead time. And so when people don't have to have dead time, then it puts us in a much better position to, you're not paying for that. Someone's not paying for it, either the contractor or the producer. And so that's one of the big reasons that I think a lot of this stuff will pick up. And you will start to see people either pack their schedules or oftentimes, start doing half days. Half days don't make sense unless you're working at home. Then you can say, hey, you're booking me from 1 to 5 or from 8 to noon or whatever. And those start to make more sense when you're at home than when you had to go in. And that's going to also help make shows more efficient. So those are things that are going to, I think, keep on going down that direction. Next question.
Yeah, is it still, on that note, is it still 50% for a day rate for a travel day?
It just depends. We have some folks we work with that it's just a day, because it's just a day for them. It's a day that you could have been doing something. They could have been working for somebody else, and so day is a day. I would say that 80% of the people we work with, we usually are able to negotiate a half day for the travel days. But there's 20% that, and usually what's funny is the folks that charge full dates also don't charge us overtime. It's an interesting thing. Like, don't charge overtime. They just say like a day is a day is a day is a day is a day, and they'll work long days, short days, whatever. But it's still going to be a day, of what, and they've just figured out how much money they want to make when they do that. Obviously within reason, but I think that, so that's kind of how that works. Good, Chris.
Travel days I've never heard of anybody charging 50, but 60, 75. When I travel, when I'm on the road, I'll tell producers, I work on what I call Vegas time. You never see a clock in a casino. As long as you don't take advantage of me, I don't care. I'm just here to work. Let's just get this thing done. But when I start seeing like things scheduled, like super long hours, then I push back a little. But normally it's just and typically I'm in a hotel suite somewhere just cutting footage, and I'll take naps and breaks, and I'm just here to get it done. I don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. Mickey.
Yeah, for us, a travel day is full rate unless it's a longer form project, running 2-3 months. Then we would consider going 50% for labor, but on equipment, it's always 100% on the travel day.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Hector Rodriguez in Springfield, Virginia. The latest TechRise USB external stereo sound adapter does not work with the TS tip sleeve headset mics. Anybody has run into this problem and how they fixed it? Tip sleeve to tip ring sleeve adapter.
So the quick fix is if you pull it out one pop, you hit one click, it'll work. It's a very janky way to do it, but you can just pull it out one. We got surprised by it, so we had to tell a whole bunch of people on the far end to do it because we didn't expect it. Then you can also buy a TS to TRS adapter. So it's a TS female to TRS male adapter that you can buy that will work with that. But it is why we're not buying TechRises anymore. So the original TechRise that we recommended did do it correctly. They changed the design, and when they changed the design, it kind of thumped us, and so we've stopped buying them. And so we're now buying the Audio Technica versions because the Audio Technica version works. Go, Courtney.
If you're technically astute, if you look back through Mukana, you'll find someone has disassembled one and pried up the tine from the ring on the mic.
Yeah, you can mechanically fix it. Yeah.
It does void your warranty, though.
It does. You void your warranty. You're never going to be able to return it and get it for that. Go ahead, Sky.
Yes, I went to Amazon. They are completely out, whoever that supplier was, but B&H does have them, and mine is on its way.
What, the Audio Technicas?
Correct.
Yeah, usually when we start talking about it, they get sold out pretty quickly. So so I would go if you want one, I would go to B&H right now, because by later this week it'll probably be sold out. With what's how it typically works here. Go ahead, Leland.
Just one thing I wanted to add that I've been seeing on newer builds of PCs, there's a new port that they're using for the mic and headphone jack that are together on a single port. It's actually a TRRR. You might say it's got 3 rings on it. So it's one of those things where you have to split your headset and your mic on a separate line. They come with these normally with the PC build. So watch for those. You might run into problems there as well.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Pete in Seattle. Have you gotten Zoom multi-region data center routing to work? All users go through cloud top in the US instead of their local POP.
Haven't tried. Anyone else? Nope, you stumped us. Doesn't happen very often, but there you go. Next question.
Alex Legnowitz in Toronto asks, has anyone found a solution to control multiple iPhones on Ronin gimbals?
I think that you could do that with Filmic Pro. I think you could control the different ones with Filmic Pro, but you'd be able to log into them, getting onto the same Wi-Fi. So but you'd have to have that one going out as Filmic. And we have experimented with that, of doing the way we've done it with a iPhone is to do a share to a Apple TV, and the Apple TV goes into the switcher. And so you get clean aperture out of Filmic Pro, and then you can have the Filmic remote control that phone, but also log into other phones that might be available. What I'd love to see is Filmic Pro have an iPad version that let me bring up 3 or 4 cameras and control all of them. Go ahead, Jonas.
Does Filmic Pro control the gimbal though? Because I think what he's
won't
talking
control
about
the gimbal.
having a
Yeah,
DJI Osmo and wanting to control more.
I was controlling the phones.
Yeah.
Because I saw anyone found to control multiple phones on Ronin gimbals. So controlling the phones on Ronin gimbals is possible. Controlling the gimbal, I don't know of any solution there. Yeah. Last question.
Last one's coming in from Vincent Alvarez, just north of me in Bellingham, Washington. I have a Sonos Arc soundbar, and it may have blown a speaker. I think I hear it while watching the movie Tenet, very low bass. Is there a way a civilian can confirm this other than buying one side-by-side test?
I will say that if you're going to test something, Tenet will do it. Tenet makes my my whole house rattle. I've got a big subwoofer, and it really does. Tenet really does make the whole house vibrate. So it could be getting outside of the speaker's capacity, to be honest with you. On a sound bar, I'm not 100% sure, but it shouldn't be. What I guess the question is you said one speaker. It won't be the little speakers in your sound bar. It'll be the subwoofer that is vibrating. It's the only one that's really doing that. So you should be able to listen to that, or that's going to be where you're going to get it. It's not going to be a little speaker. It will be the subwoofer that's vibrating in Tenet, in my opinion. Go ahead. If it's somewhere else, then you really have a problem. But I think you would hear that all the time. Tenet has a ton of low frequency, very loudly mixed low frequency stuff going on in it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, most soundbars will probably have a subwoofer, which is where
that's what I'm saying. A separate subwoofer is what you're looking for.
Would be coming out of. But if I've had a problem with my Vizio soundbar, one of the little driver, the little 2-inch drivers in there would start to rattle at a specific frequency. And you can take a sweep generator and generate some tones and feed it into that. If you can feed it into your soundbar and sweep it up and find the resonant frequency that causes it to rattle, and rattle it for a while, and sometimes it'll shake that piece of dirt or grit out of there. That way,
or it'll destroy it. One or the other. The other thing to know is that I thought that my subwoofer was vibrating for a while, and it turned out that something in the wall had kind of just fallen up against it, and at one frequency it would rattle. And so there was a lot of me trying to figure out what was wrong with my subwoofer. And it turned out it was just something that had kind of dislodged. Most likely it dislodged because the subwoofer was making so much noise. It kind of shook everything around it.
You think?
Yeah. And so something fell on it, and then it was buzzing, but only at a very specific frequency. So it could be something that's environmental around it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's a big subwoofer. So anyway, it's really great. I at one point I didn't really it came with the house. I didn't put it in. I don't really know what all the things are. All I know is that you can hear it from half a block away when we're watching Tenet, because I happened to be watching Tenet when I got out of the car, and I was like, oh, everyone's watching Tenet. And I felt a little embarrassed that my neighbors might know every movie that I'm at least listening to. All right. Well, thanks everybody. What's funny is that, you know, I like having the second hours because it brings in different subjects and everything else, but we're very capable of filling up 2 hours comfortably as well. So of questions, sometimes it's nice to have kind of a bit of an omnibus that we just kind of catch up with. Sunday was often the omnibus in the past, and it still is to some degree, but we spend an hour talking about Mad in the Kitchen typically. So it's not as much of an omnibus as it was before. So it almost has its own second hour at the moment. Anyway, we have again Leon speakers tomorrow. It should be a lot of fun, and pretty excited about that. And so stay tuned for that. Thank you for the producers for great questions, driving our conversation forward, keeping it moving, giving us something to talk about. And thanks to the panelists who, again, like every day, making it happen and having great answers. It's always fun. We're going to start the post show, and then otherwise I'll see you all tomorrow. All right, see you later. Is that uncomfortable moment when you said goodbye, but you're not really ready to leave, and you hadn't gotten quite to your car, and
kind of like